Hello everyone, this is chapter 2 from the book of Generational Wealth, A Chosen Joy. The language of poverty. The chosen joy is never announced. No parent gathers the family and say, this one will carry more. In Vietnamese homes, responsibility is not spoken, it is felt. It settles on the shoulders of the child who listens too closely, who volunteers before being asked, who learns to read the silence between adults. I became that child without ceremony. By the time I was 11, I already knew which siblings needed help with homework, which day the electricity bill arrived, which tone of my father's voice meant worry. No one called me chosen, yet somehow I was often beside my mother when decisions were made, as if she were quietly teaching me a language she herself had learned from hardship. That language was the language of poverty, not dramatic poverty, but careful poverty, the poverty of limits inside a respectable life. The market became my first classroom. Every morning I walked with my mother to the Dalat market. The air smelled with wet earth, fresh cilantro, and sweet smoke of grilled corn. Baskets of vegetables shone like small gardens. Vendors called out prices in musical voices, pretending indifference while watching each customer like a chess opponent. Holding my mother's hand, I learned more about money than any book could teach. She moved through the storms with gentle confidence. First, she greeted the seller warmly, asking about their children, their health. Then she began to bargain, not with greed, but with necessity. I watched her touch a bundle of morning glory, tilt her head, and say, a little less, chị ơi, I have many mouths at home. The seller would laugh, lower the price a few coins, and both women would smile as if they had completed a small dance. From my mother, I learned that negotiation could be kind, that money did not need to humiliate anyone. Yet I also learned the vocabulary of limitation. She rarely chose the finest cut of meat, rarely the brightest fruit at the top of the pie. These are just as good, she would whisper to me, selecting the second best tomatoes, the fish a little smaller. Her choices were not stingy, they were strategic, shaped by 12 appetites waiting at home. Watching her, I felt two emotions at once, admiration for her wisdom and quiet wish for the life she would not need for such carefulness. Near the entrance of the market sat the peddlers and the bakers. My mother never passed them without placing a few coins into their hats. Sometimes she had bargained fiercely only minutes before, yet generosity flowed from her hands without hesitation. I asked once, Ma, why give when we don't have much? She answered, con à, mình thiếu nhưng người ta còn thiếu hơn. Mean we are short, but they are shorter. That sentence gave itself into me. From her I learned that poverty and generosity could live in the same body. But I also wonder, must kindness always wear the clothes of scarcity? Could there be generosity that did not count every coin afterwards? These market mornings shaped my inner world more than school lessons. The language of poverty was not only in words, it was in gestures, the way my mother folded money twice before putting it in her pocket, the way her hesitated before buying something for herself, the way she chose practicality over pleasure again and again. No one told me to imitate her. Children learn by breathing the air around them. At 11, I began to carry responsibilities that fell older than my years. I helped manage the shopping list, calculated how far the food must stretch, reminded younger siblings not to waste. I felt important and strangely heavy. This is how the chosen joy is trained through everyday errands that become destiny. Yet inside me another language was waking. Why I admire my mother's skill, I also dream of a different rhythm. I imagine walking through the market one day without calculating, choosing the best fruit simply because it was beautiful, giving to the peddlers without wondering what we would lack tomorrow. I did not desire luxury, I desire ease. The sentence I heard around me shaped my beliefs. Save for the rainy days. Don't aim too high. Rich people suffer in other ways. These phrases were meant to protect us from envy and disappointment, but they also taught me to lower my eyes before looking at the horizon. I began to feel that our family lived inside an invisible fence that called enough. At the market, I saw other women fill their baskets without bargaining, laughing freely with the sellers. I wondered what language they spoke at home. Did their children grow up believing the world was wide? The chosen joy begins by asking such dangerous questions. I love my mother deeply. I did not wish to reject her ways. Yet a seed was growing in me, a dream of abundance living that would not betray her generosity but expand it. I wanted to keep her kindness and lose her fear. That dream was the beginning of a breaking a family curse. Not a curse of hunger, but a curse of limited imagination. The divine was teaching me through carrots and corns, through the smell of fish sauce and the sound of bargaining voices. It was teaching me that poverty is first a story we repeat. Change the story, and the road may change as well. By the time we walked home from the market, my arms aching from heavy bags, I felt older than 11. I had seen how a household survived, how dignity negotiated with necessity. It had also glimpsed another possibility, one my mother could not yet imagine. She never told me, "You will carry this family," but her trust placed the weight gently in my hands. I became bilingual without knowing it, fluent with careful tongue of scarcity, and slowly learning the secret tongue of abundance. The chosen joy grows in this tension. Every coin of my mother placed in the beggar's hat whispered to me, "Money is for loving." Every price she negotiated whispered another truth, "Money is fragile." Between those two voices, my destiny was forming. I began to promise silently that one day our family would live beyond counting, beyond choosing second best, beyond quiet fear that follow every purchase. I would honor my mother not by repeating her limits, but by giving her a world where her generosity could breathe freely. This was not rebellion, it was gratitude with wings, the language of poverty that has shaped me but would not define me. The market had been my first school, and from it I carry both wisdom and holy dissatisfaction. At 11 years old, walking beside my mother through the noisy streets of Dalat, I did not know that I was becoming the family's chosen one. I only knew that something inside me wanted more room for love, and that desire, born among vegetable stones and peddlers' hats, was the first steps toward a life of abundance. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy it. Please click subscribe and looking forward to the next chapter. Thank you.